The body of Darius D. Coleman, a highly respected Houston music producer, was found discarded in a drainage canal, his life brutally taken under mysterious circumstances. The scene was chilling. His body showed signs of a controlled execution, zip tie ligature marks, and wiped electronics. It was a professional hit, but who could have wanted to silence D? And why? His reputation in the music industry was sterling. He had worked with some of the most promising talent in the business, earning the respect of both peers and protégés. His sudden and violent death left everyone who knew him reeling, but no one could fathom the depth of betrayal that may have led to this tragedy. Detectives quickly realized that D's death was no ordinary homicide. The crime scene itself was unsettlingly clean, as if someone had carefully erased any trace of evidence. But the investigators found something that would set the stage for the entire investigation. A single partial print on a flash drive discarded at the scene. It was a clue that would unravel a complex web of deceit, lies, and betrayal. In the following investigation, detectives would face a tangled maze of burner phones, encrypted files, and conflicting alibis, ultimately revealing a far darker story than anyone could have predicted. This case wasn't just about murder, it was about power, money, and the dangerous people who lurk behind the scenes of the music industry. Darius D. Coleman wasn't just a music producer. He was a cornerstone of Houston's music scene. Known for his ability to spot raw talent and help it reach its fullest potential, D had worked with some of the most promising and influential artists in the industry. His expertise in sound design and production was unmatched, earning him a reputation as one of the city's top-tier producers. But behind the polished exterior of his professional life, D was more than just a producer. He was a businessman, managing his own label and making waves in the competitive world of music production. D's success wasn't accidental. It was the result of years of dedication, long hours in the studio, and an unyielding passion for his craft. He had built a network of collaborators and partners who respected him, yet the high stakes of the music industry came with its own set of dangers. Rivalries, jealousy, and the pursuit of power often played out behind closed doors, and D was no stranger to the tensions that brewed in these spaces. However, his rise to prominence also made him a target. In the cutthroat world of music production, success often led to resentment, and in D's case, it might have led to something far darker, murder. His untimely death sent shockwaves through the industry, with many questioning who could have wanted him gone and why. At Beyond the Evidence, we delve into the details of cases like D's, breaking down the twists and turns that bring these mysteries to light. If you haven't already, make sure to subscribe to our channel and join us as we uncover the truth behind the headlines. In the next section, we'll take a closer look at D's relationships, both professional and personal, and how they may have led to a tragic end. Darius D. Coleman had a network that spanned both the music industry and the undercurrents of Houston's urban culture. His rise to prominence was built on connections with artists, business partners, and other producers, all of whom played crucial roles in his success. But as with any high-profile figure, his relationships were not without complications. Dee's ability to collaborate with some of the most influential names in music earned him both admiration and envy. One of Dee's closest allies in the industry was James "Jimmy" Tyler, a fellow producer who had worked with Dee for years. The two shared a mutual respect for one another's work, and their collaboration on multiple projects had contributed to Dee's rise in the industry. However, their relationship was far from flawless. There had always been a quiet undercurrent of competition between them, with each trying to outdo the other, albeit in different ways. While Jimmy was known for his innovative soundscapes, Dee's ability to spot emerging talent and mold it into something extraordinary was unmatched. The rivalry simmered beneath the surface, unnoticed by most. On the other end of the spectrum was Dee's rival, Marcus Dixon, a producer with a more cutthroat approach to the business. Unlike Jimmy, who played within the established rules of the industry, Marcus was known for his willingness to do whatever it took to get ahead. He often clashed with Dee over creative differences, but it wasn't just the music that sparked tension between them. Marcus had been linked to shady business dealings, including money laundering, and Dee's growing success had started to cut into Marcus's profits. In the competitive world of music, where financial gains often hinge on who controls the distribution of sound, Dee's success was beginning to threaten Marcus's empire. Whether out of professional jealousy or something more sinister, Marcus's disdain for Dee had become well known in industry circles. Yet, it wasn't just the men in Dee's professional life who might have had a motive. Dee had a string of complicated personal relationships, particularly with women who had come and gone over the years. One former girlfriend, Karen, had a turbulent breakup with Dee that left her emotionally devastated. While Karen had moved on, there were whispers that she still harbored feelings of betrayal, though no one knew for sure how deep her anger ran. In the wake of Dee's death, these relationships were placed under the microscope. Investigators began to scrutinize everyone close to Dee, examining the dynamics and the hidden tensions that may have motivated someone to end his life. Was it an act of jealousy from a fellow producer, a personal betrayal from someone in his circle? Or was Dee simply the victim of a power struggle between rivals? As the investigation progressed, it became clear that Dee's life was tangled in a web of ambition, envy, and secrets, each thread pulling tighter as the truth unraveled. Every relationship, whether business or personal, had its own hidden undercurrent. Each person had something to gain from Dee's downfall. But which of them was willing to go to the extreme? The discovery of Darius D. Coleman's body was both shocking and perplexing. Found in a drainage canal on the outskirts of Houston, the circumstances of his death were nothing short of eerie. His body bore marks that suggested a controlled execution, zip-tie ligatures on his wrists, and the absence of personal items such as his phone or wallet. Crime scene investigators found no signs of a struggle or theft, which immediately ruled out robbery or random violence. The scene had been meticulously cleaned, as though someone had gone to great lengths to erase any trace of what had happened. This level of precision immediately raised suspicion, suggesting that the murder had been planned and executed with professional intent. The initial forensic investigation revealed a chilling detail. D's electronics, including his phone and laptop, had been wiped clean. It was as if someone had intentionally tried to erase his digital footprint, further supporting the theory that this was not a crime of passion, but a calculated murder designed to eliminate traces of the killer's identity. This raised several questions. Why erase the evidence? What was D involved in that could have made him a target for such a brutal execution? What appeared to be a dead end, however, was the discovery of a single partial fingerprint on a discarded flash drive found at the crime scene. The flash drive was unusual, not because it contained anything of immediate value, but because it was the only piece of evidence that had not been thoroughly wiped or destroyed. Crime scene technicians had hoped for more, but the fingerprint gave them something to go on, a clue that could potentially lead to the killer. The flash drive, however, was encrypted, and its contents were locked behind a veil of secrecy that hinted at something more significant than a mere personal vendetta. The investigation quickly turned to D's last known activities. Detectives learned that he had been involved in a late-night recording session at his studio just days before his death. The session had been scheduled to finalize a major collaboration with several up-and-coming artists. His studio, known for its high-end equipment and state-of-the-art production tools, had been left undisturbed after his death, but the encrypted files on the flash drive suggested that something was off. Digital forensics experts began their work to unlock the files, but the task would not be easy. D had always been cautious with his work, using encryption to protect his projects. What was so important about these files that someone would go to such extreme lengths to cover it up? As the investigation deepened, early warning signs began to emerge. A connection was made between the corrupted audio file found on the flash drive and a break-in that had occurred at D's studio just days before his death. The break-in, though initially deemed a minor incident, now seemed significant. Surveillance footage showed no signs of forced entry, and nothing appeared to be stolen. Yet, something had been tampered with, specifically D's computer, which had been left running when the break-in occurred. A corrupted file was discovered on the computer, one that did not belong to D. This audio file became a critical clue, leading investigators to believe that someone had been inside D's studio shortly before his murder, possibly to steal or destroy something of value. The most troubling revelation, however, came when digital forensics revealed an unknown male voice embedded in the corrupted audio file. The voice print analysis placed this individual at the scene of the studio just minutes before D's estimated time of death. This new lead shifted the investigation into a new direction. Who was this man? And why had his voice been recorded in such close proximity to D? As the investigators began to unravel the mystery, the early warning signs pointed to a far more complicated situation than anyone had initially believed. The pieces were beginning to come together, but the investigation was still far from clear. Was D's death connected to his professional rivalries, or was there something more, something hidden beneath the surface of his career and relationships, that had led to his brutal murder? As the investigation into the death of Darius D. Coleman progressed, the case began to unravel in unexpected and complex ways. With each new discovery, the puzzle seemed to grow more intricate, and the initial assumptions about Dee's murder were put into question. The breakthrough came when detectives focused on the flash drive found at the crime scene. Despite its encryption, digital forensics experts were able to recover a partial file, revealing a string of encrypted studio files that Dee had been working on in his final days. However, unlocking the full contents of the drive proved to be far more difficult than anticipated. The encrypted data was clearly designed to protect its contents. This was no ordinary recording session. It was during this phase of the investigation that a troubling pattern emerged. Investigators found that a series of phone calls, all originating from burner phones, had been made to Dee's studio in the days leading up to his death. These calls were odd, brief, cryptic, and involving no identifiable names, but they were enough to suggest someone had been tracking Dee's movements. The investigators were no longer looking at a simple murder. They were now dealing with a coordinated effort to silence Dee, to remove him from the equation before he could expose something hidden in those studio files. As detectives sifted through Dee's professional network, another layer of the investigation unfolded. It was revealed that Dee had been on the verge of making a significant business deal with several high-profile clients. But there were rumors that these negotiations were tainted by criminal activity. Among the most prominent of these rumors was the involvement of Marcus Dixon, a rival music producer, with whom Dee had an increasingly strained relationship. Dixon had a reputation for using underhanded tactics to advance his own career, and there were whispers that he had been attempting to launder money through Dee's label. This information had been circulating in the industry, but it wasn't until now that investigators realized the true weight of Dixon's potential involvement. The investigation took a darker turn when it became clear that someone had infiltrated Dee's studio to retrieve more than just the files on the flash drive. Surveillance footage from a studio, which had been examined under increasing scrutiny, revealed the presence of an unknown man. The footage was grainy, but enough of the figure could be seen to make a critical connection. His movements were deliberate, methodical. There was no sign of panic or urgency, as one might expect from a break-in. The man knew exactly where to go and what to tamper with. Forensic experts identified several files that had been accessed, but it was the audio file, which had been corrupted, that stood out. It was this file that would later reveal the presence of a foreign voice. The mystery deepened further as the audio file, once analyzed by VoicePrint technology, identified the voice of an individual who had been at the studio just minutes before Dee's estimated time of death. The voice was deep, unfamiliar to the investigators, but unmistakable in its clarity. Who was this man, and why was he so intimately involved with Dee's final moments? This was no random break-in. The details pointed to something far more calculated, a deliberate act by someone with a vested interest in controlling Dee's business dealings, or possibly his silence. But as the investigators followed this trail, new obstacles emerged. With each step forward, it seemed there were more dead ends. The phone records led nowhere definitive, and the fingerprints found at the scene were frustratingly incomplete. The digital clues, while promising, remained tantalizingly out of reach. The forensic team had their hands full, and the sense of mounting frustration within the homicide unit was palpable. The more they uncovered, the less they understood, as if Dee's death had opened a door to an even larger, more complex web of deceit. Then a surprising breakthrough came from an unexpected source, a confidential informant who had knowledge of illicit dealings involving Marcus Dixon. This informant revealed that Dixon had been involved in a money laundering scheme, one that relied heavily on Dee's label for cover. The source went on to describe how Dee had stumbled upon the operation, possibly threatening to expose it, a potential motive that had gone unnoticed in the earlier stages of the investigation. This new lead raised the stakes significantly. Investigators had to now consider the possibility that Dee's murder wasn't just about a professional rivalry or personal betrayal. It could be part of a larger criminal operation, one that could implicate several powerful people in the music industry. But was this the true motive, or was there something even more sinister lurking in the shadows? The case had moved far beyond a simple murder investigation. As the investigators began to piece together the connection between Dee's business dealings, his last recording session, and the mysterious break-in at his studio, they realized that they were closing in on a truth that could shake the very foundations of the music industry. The immediate aftermath of Darius D. Coleman's murder sent shockwaves through the music industry, and the effects rippled outward, affecting everyone who had known him, both personally and professionally. The loss of such a prominent figure was felt deeply, but the investigation revealed something more troubling than mere shock. It exposed a complex network of relationships that had been silently fraying beneath the surface, hidden behind Dee's success. Among those most visibly affected was his longtime business partner, James "Jimmy" Tyler. Jimmy had been Dee's closest collaborator for years, and their partnership had always been marked by mutual respect and shared ambition. However, after Dee's death, Jimmy's reaction seemed at odds with the grief expected from someone so close to the victim. He appeared detached, almost too composed for someone who had just lost a friend and business partner. While some saw his calm demeanor as a sign of emotional control, others began to suspect that there was more beneath the surface. The investigators noted his reluctance to fully cooperate with certain aspects of the investigation, especially when asked about Dee's more recent business dealings and the tensions that had begun to build around them. Was his aloofness a natural response to grief, or was he hiding something more? Then there was the reaction from Dee's rival, Marcus Dixon. Known for his aggressive and sometimes underhanded approach to business, Marcus's response was what one might expect from someone who had always competed against Dee for industry dominance. However, after Dee's death, Marcus seemed to go on the defensive. While the public face of his company remained untouched, insiders reported that he had become more reclusive, only reluctantly engaging with his employees. As the investigation into Dee's murder gained momentum, Marcus's name repeatedly surfaced in relation to potential motives, money laundering, business sabotage, and even an illicit partnership with Dee. Was Marcus merely a suspect because of their rivalry, or was his involvement in Dee's murder a grim reality? At the same time, Dee's close family members, especially his younger brother, Andre, struggled to process the loss. Andre had always looked up to Dee, and his brother's death felt like a devastating blow, one that left him grappling with feelings of both loss and helplessness. Andre, although deeply mourning, became one of the key individuals who pushed for justice. Yet, the family's grief was complicated by the suspicion that one of Dee's closest associates, someone they had trusted, might be involved in his death. Despite these emotional responses, the investigation had to remain focused on the evidence, not on speculation. The breakthrough came when the initial analysis of Dee's business and personal relationships suggested a larger, more intricate picture of his life. The money laundering rumors, the mysterious break-in at his studio, and the strange encryption of the audio files all began to make sense within the context of these reactions. It became clear that Dee's murder was not just a random act of violence. It was a carefully orchestrated move to stop him from revealing dangerous secrets. The emotional responses were now overshadowed by the realization that Dee's death was the consequence of powerful, dangerous forces in motion. Forces that were unwilling to allow Dee to expose the truth. The aftermath of his death was still unfolding, and with each passing day, the investigation exposed more hidden tensions, lies, and betrayals. As the investigation into Darius D. Coleman's murder unfolded, it became clear that this was no ordinary homicide. Each new lead brought with it more questions than answers, pulling the homicide unit deeper into a maze of deception and hidden agendas. What had started as a straightforward murder investigation had rapidly transformed into something far more complex. An investigation that would uncover a web of criminal activity, betrayal, and a fight for power that extended far beyond Dee's professional relationships. The breakthrough came when detectives revisited the evidence that had initially seemed trivial. The flash drive found at the crime scene. The encrypted files on the drive were finally unlocked, revealing audio files that provided startling clues. It was in these files that the investigators found an encrypted audio recording, a recording that was corrupted, but still identifiable upon further analysis. Digital forensics experts worked tirelessly to recover the fragmented data, and what they uncovered was a recording of Dee's final moments in the studio, followed by a distorted and eerie silence. Upon closer inspection, the file revealed something even more unsettling, a voice. The voice was distorted, almost unrecognizable, but the audio file's metadata indicated that it had been recorded minutes before Dee's estimated time of death. VoicePrint technology confirmed that the man behind the voice was an unknown male who had been in the studio shortly before the murder took place. This was a crucial piece of evidence, one that confirmed that Dee's death was not random, but the result of a calculated plan. The mystery deepened when detectives turned their attention to Dee's most recent business dealings. A confidential informant came forward with shocking revelations. This informant, who had worked within Dee's inner circle, confirmed that Dee had been growing increasingly suspicious of the people around him. According to the informant, Dee had recently discovered evidence of money laundering, involving his own label and, more disturbingly, his rival, Marcus Dixon. It seemed that Dee had unwittingly become embroiled in a far-reaching criminal operation, one that involved not only illegal financial activities, but also a power struggle within the music industry itself. With the informant's testimony, the investigation took on a new direction. It was no longer just about a professional rivalry between Dee and Marcus Dixon. It was about something far more insidious. Investigators learned that Marcus had been attempting to leverage Dee's label to clean money from illicit operations, money that flowed through various hidden channels and underground businesses. The music industry, which Dee had once seen as his creative haven, had become a battleground for criminal activity, and Dee had unknowingly walked into the crossfire. As the investigators delved further into the business dealings between Dee and Marcus, they discovered a pattern of financial transactions that pointed to money laundering and other criminal schemes. The studio, once the epicenter of Dee's creative work, had become a hub for money laundering activities. Dee had been unknowingly facilitating these operations, and his decision to confront Marcus and expose these activities had likely made him a target. But there was more to Dee's murder than just financial gain. The deeper the investigation went, the clearer it became that Dee had uncovered something far darker, a secret that had put him in the line of fire. The case took yet another turn when forensic experts examined a recovered shell casing found near the crime scene. The casing had been discarded in a hurry, but its microscopic tool marks were a critical clue. Ballistics experts matched these marks to an unregistered firearm found in the suspect's storage unit. This discovery was pivotal. The firearm, though legally unregistered, was connected to a series of illicit deals involving Marcus Dixon and his associates. The ballistics evidence linked the weapon to Dee's murder, and with it, the investigators were able to confirm that Marcus Dixon was the likely perpetrator. This revelation was a turning point. With the ballistics evidence in hand, detectives could now piece together a timeline of events leading up to Dee's death. The weapon, the voice print, the money laundering scheme, it all came together. Dee had been killed not just because of professional rivalry, but because he had become a threat to a larger criminal operation that stretched far beyond his own label. But even with this breakthrough, the case was far from closed. Investigators continued to uncover evidence of other individuals who had been complicit in the money laundering operation. Dee's label, once a symbol of creative success, had been used as a front for these illicit dealings. Marcus Dixon, along with several associates, had orchestrated a plan to silence Dee, knowing that his discovery of the operation would jeopardize everything they had worked to build. As the investigation moved forward, it became clear that this murder was the result of more than just a personal vendetta. It was a calculated act of self-preservation by a group of powerful people determined to protect their empire at all costs. With the mounting evidence pointing to Marcus Dixon as the prime suspect, the case was ready to take its final steps toward resolution. But it wasn't just about bringing a killer to justice. It was about unraveling a larger criminal network and exposing the corrupt side of an industry that had been hiding its secrets for far too long. With the ballistics evidence now firmly linking Marcus Dixon to Darius D. Coleman's murder, the investigation entered its final, critical phase. The weapon recovered from Dixon's storage unit, combined with the voice print analysis, created an airtight case against him. Prosecutors were able to reconstruct the entire sequence of events, from the illicit money laundering operation to the calculated steps taken to silence Dee. It was clear Dee's murder was not a crime of passion, but a cold, premeditated act designed to protect a criminal empire built on deceit and corruption. The consequences for Marcus Dixon and his associates were imminent. As the investigation reached its conclusion, it became apparent that Dee had been far more than just a casualty of a professional rivalry. His murder was a result of a carefully orchestrated effort to keep a web of illegal activities hidden from public view. The authorities began to close in on Dixon, as well as those complicit in the money laundering operation that had been running through Dee's label. For Dixon, the evidence was damning. The unregistered firearm, the voice print analysis, and the financial connections to the criminal enterprise were enough to ensure that he would be prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law. But the consequences extended far beyond Marcus Dixon's legal fate. Dee's death left a lasting mark on everyone who had known him, from family members to business associates. His younger brother, Andre, who had been one of the most vocal advocates for justice, was left grappling with the loss of not just a brother, but a mentor and a guide. While Andre found solace in the conviction of those responsible for Dee's murder, the emotional toll of losing his sibling weighed heavily on him. The community, too, mourned the loss of a man who had been a source of inspiration, not only for his work in music production, but for his dedication to helping others find their voice in an often unforgiving industry. For the investigators involved, the case had been both a triumph and a tragedy. The homicide unit had worked tirelessly to untangle the complex threads of Dee's life and death, and while they had uncovered the truth, the emotional weight of the case remained. It wasn't just about bringing a killer to justice. It was about restoring a sense of order to a world that had been disrupted by greed, betrayal, and the abuse of power. The investigation had revealed the dark underbelly of the music industry, an industry that Dee had been a part of, and ultimately, the investigation served as a reminder of the price that individuals sometimes pay for uncovering the truth. As Marcus Dixon was arrested and the legal proceedings began, Dee's legacy was being remembered in a different light. His family and friends, though still grieving, were determined to honor his memory by ensuring that his life's work wasn't overshadowed by the darkness of his death. Dee's contribution to the music industry, especially his role in shaping the careers of young artists, was celebrated posthumously. His name, once synonymous with talent and ambition, was now also a symbol of resilience in the face of corruption and violence. But as the case neared its conclusion, questions lingered. How many other criminal enterprises were operating under the radar, hidden behind the glamour and prestige of industries like music? How much power did these networks hold over the lives of those they touched? Dee's murder was just one example of the lengths to which people would go to protect their interests, and the investigation into his death was only the beginning. The emotional reflection on Dee's life and death also raises questions for us as viewers. How much do we really know about the world behind the music? How often do we overlook the hidden struggles and conflicts that shape the lives of those we admire from a distance? Dee's story is a reminder that behind every success, there are stories of hardship, sacrifice, and sometimes devastating betrayal. As we conclude this investigation into the life and tragic death of Darius D. Coleman, we ask you to reflect. How does this case change your view of the music industry and the people who work within it? What do you think drives individuals to such extremes in the pursuit of power? And how can we prevent future tragedies like these from occurring? If you found this story as compelling and thought-provoking as we did, please consider subscribing to Beyond the Evidence for more in-depth investigations into true crime stories that go beyond the headlines. Your thoughts and insights are always welcome. Leave a comment below to share your reflections on Dee's case or any questions you may have. Stay tuned for more, and thank you for joining us on this journey to uncover the truth.